So Trent, what would you say if to someone that has, that is confused about their gender? I mean,
Yeah.
are these people, just confused? Is this a disorder? Again, how should they go about their lives?
I think what I would say is that who they are as a person, that they are a valuable person. God made them, they are not an accident, and that they are valuable as a person made in the image and likeness of God. But sometimes we can be confused or mistaken about our own identity. So there are people who have identity issues related to their weight. They might be deadly thin and look in the mirror and see someone who is obese, but they're
Mm,
not obese. That's a mistaken self conception of their identity. There are people with body identity integrity disorder who feel like they ought to be paralyzed and that their body is not right, when actually, no, biologically, your body is right and it shouldn't be paralyzed. And they'll try to seek out surgery to remedy that. So just because someone has a identity disorder, it doesn't mean that they're less of a person or they lack dignity. It just means that they have a mistaken sense of self and they need help and encouragement to work through this, not appeasement or trying to say, oh, yeah, of course, you're a woman. And of course, we'll do surgery to help you look more like a woman. That's just feeding more into a dangerous delusion that can be very harmful to people.
yeah, exactly, right. So if someone has, a disorder within them, is it the loving thing to allow them to indulge in that disorder? Or is the
No,
loving thing really to bring them to healing in Christ Jesus?
I would say it's the latter.
Yeah.
And there are people. What's also scary is that there are people, especially young children and teens, who will claim to have gender dysphoria, who will claim to be the other sex, but then when they get into their 20s, that goes away, and the majority of them no longer identify that way. And so, if you had done something like puberty blockers or surgery, you could cause irreparable harm to them,
Yeah.
even when it was going to go away anyways.
And I would argue that there's evidence as well for this kind of transition in homosexuality. Many people that are fully homosexual, especially in high school, they transition to heterosexual with sometimes within 5 years, sometimes within 2 years, as they grow up and they get to discover themselves more and more. So there is again this disorder within. And so when the church comes and says, beloved, try to seek Christ is definitely not, or at least it should never be from a judgmental perspective, but it's always coming from the place of love and the place of healing. Because if I truly love and care for you, I will tell you when you're going down, a rabbit hole or going down the wrong way, right?
Absolutely. Yes. To love someone is to tell them a truth graciously, even if they don't want to hear it.
So, while I agree with the both of you, clearly the world that we live in today does not agree with us. And
Right.
because whether we like it or not, today, you have these terms and these labels being thrown around, whether you're homophobic, transphobic, you're bigoted. And, the attempt to try to silence those who have an opposite view has now even reached a point where, the world is even trying to convince the vast majority of those who want to speak up that if they do speak up, not only is it bigotry and offensive, but it can even lead to a person to want to take their own lives. Now, even suicide is a threat of how it is that we try to silence people who have opposing views. And that's not to say that there isn't people who are ready and willing to take their lives because of how much pain they carry within them. The real question that I want to ask us is, should we as Christians then just mind our own business if our offense in speaking the truth in love could potentially mean that someone who is offended can hurt themselves? Is the solution to silence ourselves?
No, the solution is to engage people where they are at, to do so in a gracious way, and to understand that those who are in opposition to us, they are the ones who are presenting things that are really grave threats to people. There are many people who go deeper and deeper into transgender identity. Their suicidal ideation stays the same or it increases.
Mhm.
That's right.
There, and on my episode of my podcast recently, I showed how there was a study that was going to be published that showed that transgender interventions did not change the suicide outlook for people, and they didn't want to publish the study because they didn't want to give ammo, so to speak, to people like us. So to say no, if people find themselves having suicidal ideation, many times it's because transgender identity is also associated with other forms of mental illness, like clinical depression. And so, in trying to do gender reassignment or anything like that, you're not actually treating the source of the person's spiritual and emotional and psychological imbalance. So I would say that it's manipulative to claim, though, you have to agree with us or people are going to commit suicide. If someone's going to commit suicide, they have a psychological disorder like depression that really needs to be treated, and the interventions the other side is offering are the ones that are actually putting people at risk.
Mhm.